Let it go. High atop a mountain that seemed to touch the sky stood an ancient temple, built from dark wood and stones covered in moss. There, the air held a purity that gently embraced the lungs, and the sounds of the world softened to a gentle murmur. Birdsong, the whisper of wind through pine trees, and in the distance, the steady murmur of a river that never ceased. Living there was the Zen master Ryōkan, an elder with a serene gaze and hands worn by time. His walk was slow, not from weakness, but by choice. Each step was an act of mindfulness, a moving meditation. At dawn, when the sun was just beginning to rise, he would often go down to the river carrying a cup of tea in his hand. He needed no words. His mere presence conveyed inner peace. One morning, as Ryōkan watched the current carry away dry leaves, a young monk named Haru approached. His face showed weariness, and though young, his eyes seemed to have seen too many winters. "Master," he said, lowering his gaze, "I can't stop thinking about what I lost. Every day, my mind returns to the past, and it suffocates me." Ryōkan listened silently. He did not interrupt. He did not immediately offer advice. Instead, he pointed to the water flowing at their feet. "Look at the river, Haru. Do you see how the leaves fall into it? It doesn't stop them, doesn't hold on to them. It simply lets them go. And so, it continues on its way." Haru fell silent. In that moment, he understood that letting go of the past did not mean forgetting, but releasing the weight that kept him from moving forward. The master took a sip of tea, closed his eyes, and let the mountain breeze caress his face. There was no rush. In the Zen art, even the act of letting go requires its own time. The young Haru stayed beside Master Ryōkan, watching the water. It was not just a river. To the master, it was a mirror reflecting life's truth. The current never clung to what passed through it, whether golden autumn leaves or broken branches carried by the storm. Everything followed its course. Everything found a destination beyond sight. "But, Master," Haru said in a faint voice, "how do you let go of something that hurts so much?" Ryōkan bent down and picked up a small stone from the ground. He placed it in the young man's hand and said, "Clench it tight." Haru obeyed, closing his fist until he felt his muscles tense. Seconds passed, and his hand began to ache. "Now let it go," Ryōkan instructed. The stone dropped softly to the ground. Haru opened his hand and felt immediate relief. "Do you see? The pain wasn't in the stone, but in your choice to hold on to it." The young man remained silent, allowing the teaching to sink in slowly, like rain soaking the earth. The master, with his usual calm, continued, "The mind does the same with memories and resentment. It holds on, it clenches tight, and wonders why it suffers. But the moment you let go, the weight disappears." The wind blew through the pines, carrying the scent of wet leaves and morning tea. Haru felt something different. Not an explosive joy, but a subtle lightness, as if the air around him had grown wider. In the language of Zen, this was the first step toward true inner liberation. Ryōkan stood up and began to walk slowly upstream. "Come," he said. "I want to show you another place where the water teaches us how to live." Haru followed Master Ryōkan along a narrow path that led deep into the forest. The branches formed a natural canopy, filtering sunlight into golden flashes that danced across the leaf-covered ground. Each step they took crunched softly, as if the forest whispered its approval. The trail ran alongside the river, but now the water was calmer, forming small pools where the sky's reflection looked like a living painting. The master stopped beside a large moss-covered rock and pointed to a spot where the river met a crystal-clear waterfall. "Look there, Haru." The young man watched as the water plunged from above, hitting the stones, breaking into thousands of droplets that, despite falling, gathered again downstream to keep flowing. "Do you see?" Ryōkan continued. "Even when water is struck and broken, it does not fight to become what it was. It simply moves forward, adapting to the shape life gives it in each moment. Haru stood still, listening to the soft roar of the cascade. He realized that he, instead, had been trying to piece together a past that no longer existed, as if he could gather droplets of water in the air before they fell. The master took a small wooden bowl hanging from his belt and filled it with water from the waterfall. "Drink," he said. The young man obeyed. The water was cold, alive, as if it carried within it the strength of the entire journey it had traveled. "That is your life," Ryōkan whispered. "Fresh when you accept it, bitter when you try to stop it." At that moment, Haru felt something inside him begin to loosen. It wasn't yet full liberation, but the first breath after a long dive. The master looked at him with a faint smile and added, "Letting go is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice." The path opened into a clearing where the river formed a small beach of smooth, white stones. There, the sound of water mingled with the distant song of a solitary bird. The morning sun began to warm the surface of the rocks, and the air carried a fresh, almost sweet scent. Ryōkan crouched down and started gathering some stones. He placed them in a small pile in front of Haru. Then he stood up, took a cloth sack, and handed it to him. "I want you to carry these stones with you," he said. Haru obeyed, though he frowned. The weight was considerable, and after only a few steps, his shoulders began to ache. They walked in silence through a stretch of the forest. Roots protruded from the ground, and each step required careful attention to avoid tripping. The sack seemed to grow heavier with every minute. Finally, Haru stopped. "Master, this is exhausting. How long must I carry this weight?" Ryōkan smiled gently. "As long as you decide." The young man understood immediately. He opened the sack and let the stones fall to the ground. The sound was like a release, dry, simple, and final. He felt his body lighten, and along with that physical relief, a deeper feeling began to spread within him. "That is how it is with offenses, guilt, losses," the master said. "We walk carrying them without asking ourselves if we still need to bear them." They sat by the riverbank. Haru dipped his hands into the water, watching as the current carried away the small leaves floating around him. The master, eyes half closed, added, "The true art of letting go is not to push away what hurts us, but to open our hands and allow life to follow its course." The wind rose softly, as if wanting to carry away the last words. For the first time in a long while, Haru felt no need to speak. He simply breathed and let the moment hold him. Master Ryōkan remained silent for a moment, watching how the river continued its journey, undisturbed by stones, whirlpools, or branches it encountered. Then, he picked up a small stick and began drawing in the damp sand at the riverbank. Haru leaned in to look. "I want to tell you a story," the master said. He sketched the figure of a man carrying a large sack on his back. Long ago, a traveler carried a sack filled with objects he had collected from every place he passed through. Memories, promises, wounds, even things that didn't belong to him. He believed that by holding on to everything, he wouldn't forget anything important. Ryōkan paused and let a small wave wash away part of the drawing. But one day, while crossing a river, the weight of the sack caused him to lose his balance. The water began to rise, and the traveler, clinging to his burden, started to sink. Only when, in a desperate act, he let go of the sack, could he swim and reach the shore. And in that moment, he understood that he had carried more his fear of forgetting than the memories themselves. Haru remained still, watching the drawing disappear completely under the water. "Master," he said softly, "what if I let go of something and then regret it?" Ryōkan looked at the river and smiled gently. "Then you will have learned that even regret must be released. Life is not a chest where we store everything. It is a river that flows, and only what we can carry in our hearts without burden truly belongs to us." The sun filtered through the branches, casting golden reflections on the water. Haru felt a strange calm, as if the master's words had opened a door he didn't know was closed. There was no rush, no destination, only a silent flow he was beginning to follow. The afternoon was beginning to fall over the forest. The sky, once a deep blue, was tinged with golden and pink hues, and shadows lengthened across the leaf-covered ground. Master Ryōkan resumed walking, guiding Haru toward a spot where the river narrowed and ran more swiftly. They reached an old wooden bridge, its railings worn by time. Beneath them, the water crashed against the rocks with a deep roar. Ryōkan stopped in the middle of the bridge and looked at Haru. "I want you to throw something of yours into the water," he said. The young man raised his eyebrows. "Something of mine?" "Yes, something that means a lot to you." Haru searched through his belongings. In the inner pocket of his robe, he had a small wooden pendant his father had given him before he died. It was the only thing he had left of him. His fingers gently caressed it, and a wave of memories washed over him. "Master, I can't. This is the last thing I have from him." Ryōkan held his gaze, without reproach but with the firmness of one who knows the value of the test. "If you throw it away, you won't lose your father. You will lose the idea that he lives only in that object." The wind blew stronger, as if pushing the young man toward the decision. Haru closed his eyes. The weight of the pendant in his hand became unbearable. Then, on an impulse that drew a deep sigh from him, he threw it into the water. The pendant skipped briefly, touched the surface, and disappeared into the current. For a moment, Haru felt an emptiness in his chest, but that emptiness was not filled with sadness. Rather, an unexpected lightness. It was as if an invisible knot had loosened. Ryōkan nodded, watching how the river carried the object away without resistance. "Now your father lives in your breath, in your way of seeing the world, in the kindness you plant, not in a piece of wood." They stayed there in silence, watching the water flow away. The sky began to darken, and the first stars timidly appeared. That night, Haru and Ryōkan camped beside the river. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the nearby logs. The air was filled with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the steady murmur of the water seemed to lull thoughts into a lighter state. Haru lay back on his blanket, gazing at the starry sky. There was a strange calm in his chest, but also an empty space where the physical presence of the pendant had once been. He closed his eyes, and slowly, sleep embraced him. In his dream, he stood in the middle of the same bridge where he had released the pendant. Only this time, the river was not water, but memories. Faces, voices, joyful and painful moments flowed before him. He felt the urge to hold on to some, but each time he tried, the images dissolved like smoke between his fingers. Suddenly, he heard his father's voice, soft and near. "Son, you don't lose me by letting me go. You find me in all that you are." He woke with his heart beating slowly, as if he had traveled a long road to reach that phrase. The fire had burned down to embers, and Master Ryōkan, sitting in meditation posture, watched him with a peaceful smile. "You have traveled far tonight," he said. Haru nodded. "I think I understand now, Master. Letting go is not losing. It's opening a space." Ryōkan looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn began to tint the treetops with gold. And in that space, Haru, is where life can enter. The young man took a deep breath, feeling that night he had let fall not only a pendant, but a weight he had carried inside for years. And for the first time, thinking about the future, he felt no fear, only curiosity. Dawn arrived slowly, as if the sun wanted to walk with the same calm as Master Ryōkan. The first rays touched the surface of the river, creating golden paths that seemed to invite following them. Haru and the master walked in silence, leaving behind the place where they had spent the night. As they climbed the trail, the young monk felt each step lighter than the last. It wasn't just the absence of the pendant, but the absence of something more subtle. the invisible weight of what he had been holding in his heart for years. They reached a hill from which the entire valley could be seen. The green fields, the small houses with smoke rising from chimneys, and the river that, like a silver thread, connected everything in a single flow. Ryōkan stopped and said, "Haru, look at that river. From the mountain to the sea, its only purpose is to move forward. It doesn't turn back to pick up what it left behind. It doesn't mourn the stones it encountered. It doesn't stop to keep leaves or branches. It flows, because only by flowing does it fulfill its destiny." Haru felt a lump in his throat, but this time it wasn't sadness. It was gratitude. "Master, I think now I can walk without fear." "Then you have already learned what you needed," Ryōkan replied. "Remember, letting go is not an act of weakness, but of deep trust. It is telling life, 'I trust you to take me where I need to be.'" The young monk closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh mountain air. And in that breath, he felt that everything he had let go of had left a space that wasn't empty, but full of possibilities. As they descended, the sun rose fully, and the river in the distance seemed to guide them. Haru knew he would still have to practice the art of letting go many times, but he no longer feared it, because he understood that every time he opened his hands, life found a new way to fill them. And so, with the murmur of the water as their background music, Haru and the master continued on their way, without hurry, without weight, and without looking back.